First impressions are crucial in life, whether it is meeting someone new, watching for the first time a sport, or even playing a video game. Well, bad experiences can come and go, but impressions can stay for a ridiculous amount of time, more so that we might be aware of. And often the way we play games and the way games introduce themselves to us influences the way we perceive them forever. But why are the first impressions so crucial to begin with? First things first, roll the intro. Did it ever happen to you not to enjoy a game considered by the vast majority to be a masterpiece? I certainly have more than once even. It's been 10 years and I still need to finish playing The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim for instance. That game just doesn't click with me, even if other similar RPGs such as Fallout 3 and The Witcher do just fine. Certainly the first impression I had of the game was, troublesome to say the least. My good old friend Tito brought the disc of the game home to play it in my PlayStation 3 one day. We skipped the updates because we had little time to download them, and in my first 30 minutes of the game I had 2 crashes. A classic Bethesda experience, some would call it. And since that event I was cursed. I bought the game for the PC where it was slightly more stable, but after a handful of hours I just couldn't play it. I didn't have a bad memory of the game, but I was simply not having fun. I know the game is objectively well made, crafted to the millimeter in most of its aspects, but I do not have an exciting memory of me playing it. The first impression I had of the game certainly played a role, and it makes me a little sad to think I did not give this masterclass of a game a fair chance just for that bitter taste I had when booting it up for the first time. Reflecting about this old experience of mine made me think, is there a proper way to start playing a video game? And of course this question can be reversed to target the game more specifically. Is there a proper way a game should start? Does a weaker or stronger introduction hooks the player more to the game in question? The short answer of the first question is of course yes, but the hows? That will take longer to explain. Starting to play a game, especially a long title, requires the right input from both the player and the game. Missing one of these by either having a bad scripted prologue or playing it in the wrong way could affect your long-term perception of a title like it did in my case. So, is my experience avoidable? How crucial are the first 2 hours of gameplay? When booting up a game for the first time, there are many factors to consider that you may give for granted, but actually can increase one's perception of the game's first hours, the impressions the game will make. And as stated in introduction, do not underestimate the importance the first impressions will make in your gaming experience. Firstly, and perhaps more importantly, it is how the game decides to start for the first time. I could crack a joke among the lines of, back in the days you only need to press start, but actually the game design on how to begin a game starts way back, more than you might initially think. The very first level of Super Mario Bros. For the Nintendo Entertainment System is genius in its design. Shigeru Miyamoto programmed 1-1 as an implicit tutorial, where by playing you learn how to jump, power-ups, how to avoid and later defeat enemies and some more without any lines of text. It is incredible to think how much care video games put in their first initial level 40 years ago. Of course, with the increase of complexity of games, there was an increase of complexity in tutorials, but there are still creative and out-of-the-box prologues that will teach you the game's complex mechanics easily, introduce you to the gaming world, and in about 2 hours of playing, motivate you to complete the game. Fallout 3's prologue is perhaps a very good example of all of these positive qualities. The player starts his or her own adventure literally from the very beginning, from birth, learning how to control the game as well as the lore of the title in a unique turn. The game enchants the player from the very beginning, and once the vault is left, there's simply the rest of the game to complete. Another excellent example of a good prologue is Call of Juarez Gaslinger. The game's first chapter not only is structurally well designed, easy for newcomers but still fun to play as a veteran, but the game's unique narrative and storytelling shine and are displayed in less than 30 minutes of gameplay. But not all games have promising introductions for their own adventure. Even if I like playing 30 more hours of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, I must admit that starting the game was quite challenging. The title's plot starts in the most stereotypically anime beginning with I'm a humble boy living mostly alone until something cool happens that definitely does not increase the game's appeal to many people. A weak premise to what is overall a title I would highly suggest. However, I will give it credit for making the game's learning mechanics easy enough to grasp, unlike its predecessor Xenoblade Chronicle X. Look, I understand that some games need time to pick up steam, but 10 hours in the game and I still had no idea what was going on. Barely understanding the game's structure and the quest mechanics in a role-playing game is a huge turn-off for me, and I just couldn't carry myself playing the title. Guess I'll never play the remaining 30 hours to unlock the huge mecha robots. Another game of which prologue I must criticize once more is Yakuza Freeze. The third title of the Yakuza franchise has its infamous first part of the game taking place in Okinawa, and to call it a slow start would be an understatement. Not only does the game's plot move to a snail's pace, but the mandatory main quests of the game are essentially side stories, not even that exciting ones to be honest. But I explained this and more in that one video nobody saw about Yakuza 3's slow rhythm. As a rule of thumb, longer games do have longer introductions and longer prologues than shorter titles, but this is no excuse for lowering their quality. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdoms has a fantastic prologue, mimicking in some aspects its predecessor Breath of the Wild, but still subverting the player's expectations and making some much needed changes. The game makes a very good impression to the player and therefore increases the chances for long-term enjoyment. But as stated earlier in the video, the game can have a fantastic, outstanding, breathtaking beginning, but the player also has its own part to play to make the first impression good. It takes two to tango after all, and I'm not going to dictate how the game has to be played, since everyone's own motivation and drive to play can be drastically different to mine, but there are some good advices I wish to share in this video. An important suggestion for me to share today is to allocate a lot of time the first time you play a game. The first hours of every game are full of tutorials and explanations, crucial to give you a starting point in the digital world. Playing the game for 20 minutes, then booting it up again after a handful of days, will make the gaming experience much more frustrating. The consequences of this are many. You will forget the controls of the game, what key does what was the quest you were supposed to do, the UI is all over the place, you feel disorientated, and at last you will have a bad impression of the game, regardless of what the game has to offer. The first session with a game has to be special. You have to free up your agenda and go full in. The first 2 hours of gameplay need no interruptions, no distractions, no deviations. After this first gaming session, then you can start playing the game less often to accommodate for other hobbies of yours, but trust me that grasping the game's structure from the very beginning will make subsequent gaming sessions much smoother and enjoyable. You will still make some silly mistakes with controls and whatnot, but to a lesser rate. And also, as a follow-up suggestion, pick the right game for the right time. There is no point for starting a massive game like Persona 5 if you have exams coming up and can only taste a small part of the game. Again, the longer the game, the longer the prologue, so not being able to allocate time for a game's beginning will make your long experience worse. As a footnote, you do not need to abandon gaming as a whole if you are very busy with time. You just need to pick up a game that fits better in your agenda. There is a good website called How Long to Beat that allows you to see a rough estimate on how long a game takes to, well, beat, meaning you can mentally and practically organize your time, making your gaming experience more pleasant. Rather than to casually start a massive game like Dragon Quest XI Echoes of an Elusive Age that lasts about 60 to 90 hours, you could play Half-Life 2, a very condensed masterpiece that will last you about 12. The personal mood the player is in can also affect his perception of gaming. I discourage you to start a massive digital adventure if there's little motivation, since a good prologue might not spark that fire you're hoping for. I rather suggest playing the right game for the right state of mind. For example, if I come back from work exhausted and I need to blow up some stuff, I boot up Just Cause. So if I feel like I'm for a challenge and wanna show the world I'm the best, I boot up Cuphead. I wanna listen to a podcast but achieve something mundane but satisfying in the background, I play Euro Truck Simulator 2. The point being that the right state of mind can have an effect when first playing a title, meaning that the player, you, need to feel ready and be thoughtful on how you start playing your newly bought game. The right introduction played at the right time with the right conditions will make your first impression of a game outstanding and last forever. The first handful of hours of gameplay can truly make or break the whole experience, and in today's video I hope I made it clear how the first impressions are symbiotic between the game's design and the player's state of mind. Starting a game well is a joy, but the opposite is also true. Will I ever play Skyrim in the future? That's the big question. Well, maybe. But apart from like a handful of friends who have played it and enjoyed it, I really don't know anyone who would recommend it to me. I do wonder, after 10 years and multiple releases of the game, Bethesda surely must have fixed all the bugs. Isn't that so? Well, there's only one way to find out. If you made it this far, I wanted to thank you one too many prologues times for watching today's video. At first I was thinking of making separate videos, one about the game's prologues and one on how players more specifically should get started to play a new game, but I thought the two topics were quite overlapping. Nevertheless, if you enjoyed it, please leave this video a like, share it and subscribe for more. I wish you all a wonderful day, and until next time, arrivederci!